Greetings, YouTubers of all shapes and sizes. Today, we're going to do the one thing that I was born for. We're going to show you the one fix that's going to make you the happiest with your junk guitar of any of the fixes I show. It's going to help us functionality-wise, and it's going to help us tonal-wise. We have our junk guitar that we've been working on. We've painted it up, we've put strings on it, we've got everything now in tune, we've got our height where we like it, we've done a quick truss rod adjustment. Let's get the Floyd happy. That's step one in blocking out our Floyd Rose. How do we say happy? If you have a certain angle or a certain geometry you like on your Floyd Rose, great. If you don't, let's go with a bass standard. Get the flat of the guitar and flat of the pads. Now, each Floyd or edge is different. Some of these have raked up sides, so don't think that the side is what you want flat. It's the pad that the string comes out of, that the string is held into. That's what you want flat with the body. Once we get that set, then we're ready to block out our Floyd. We are going to need 5 measurements. The first measurement we need is this, directly across as where it's going to contact our Floyd Rose block. Make a nice scratch. That's what I use my 90-degree for. If you don't have that, that's fine. Just grab a screwdriver and make a scratch. That is the first thing we need. The next thing we need is width. Now, bodies normally start curving up back to the body before you get to your edge of your Floyd block. Mine does not, as you can tell. Mine stays flat all the way across. Actually, hiding over here, let's say that that one curves the body in a little bit before the end. So what we want to do is we want to make a mark at exactly how far they go. Let's say this one curved in a little bit here. Let's make a mark up and down there. And let's say over here, right about here, we'll make a mark up and down. That's going to be the width of the piece that we cut. The next thing we need to do is the depth of the body. Now, if you can see in there, the body goes down flat and then it's got a little lip. We need our piece that we're going to put onto our Floyd block to not hit that lip. So we need to measure how deep it's going to be. Okay, at this point we grab our digital caliper. How do you work a digital caliper? The little wheel on the bottom moves back and forth. This tells you the distance between the two heads, nice and sharp points on each. Or on the bottom, this will tell you the distance from the little thing that points out and the flat spot. We're going to use that right now to measure. I can't really do this with only one hand, but set that in there so your flat part sits on the flat part of the body, and then you put it up and you push on the bottom portion until it hits that lip. Go in there and inspect and make sure you're sitting on the lip and on the flat spot, and you see that we're 0.57 of an inch. We're going to want to write that down because that's the thickest from top to bottom of the guitar that our metal piece can be. The last measurement we want is the most important of all, and that is going to be the thickness, and we have to eyeball this one unless we can really get it down and in there, the thickness of the plate that's going to go between the two. So put the base on the block and roll it in until it's dead even with the edge of the body. You can also do this the other way by measuring this way, and we're seeing we're right about there. So we need 3.23 thickness. Okay, we take our final measurements. What are our final measurements? We want to see the total width of this. Now, because this one actually goes out a little further, that's my original scratch. That's my new scratch. Why do I do a V scratch sometimes? Well, what happens if you're scratching down here and you don't really know which side is which? Is this side the good side? Is this side the good side? You take the point at which you know you're measuring and scratch the other direction, so you're making a V. So the point of the V is actually what you want to be measuring off of. So this tells me if I go point of V to point of V, I can be 1.70 inches total width. I'm 574 tall, I'm 323 thick, and 170 wide. So what I need to do, go find a piece of metal, and this may take me a couple of days, a couple of trips to eBay, trips to a little metal supply place, Home Depot, whatever. Find something 3.23 or very close to thick. We can put some shims in it. If we find something exactly 300 or even 250, we can shim it to 323. But whatever it is, we got to make it 323. I like to do it in one piece, so that's what we're going to do next. Okay, I'm back. I did things a little backwards. I looked around and couldn't find the right piece of metal, so I found two pieces of stainless, different thicknesses, a marine grade of stainless that I love to use, and I welded them together. So this is now the perfect thickness, the width, and height. What we're going to do now is set it up against the block of the Floyd between our two little arrows, put it right on where that line is that we made, and then we're going to slide it just a little bit further down. Why is that? We do not want this block to ever come in contact with that lip of wood. We want to move it further away. It's okay if it's a little bit higher than the flat spot of the carved out portion of the back. What's not okay is if it sits too far down and it catches that lip and starts tearing the wood apart. We want, now I know what you're saying. Before we go any further, you're saying, Buzz, this is too hard for me. This is way too hard for me. I can't do this stuff. I don't have metal like this. I don't have welders. I don't have cutters. If you can't do this, take this video to a fabricator, not a guitar shop. Guitar shops already know how to do things like this. You could take this to any fabricator who does cars, a farmer out in his back, garage. Anybody that can fabricate can do this. Show this video to them, give them a couple of dollars in cash, and have them make this for you. Then you can reassemble everything because you understand the guitar side. We're going to line them up right according to our marks. I'm going to slide them just a little bit closer to the end, and I'm going to make a mark. Why do I make that mark? Because that's where I want it to be when I'm all finally done. Head to your Home Depot, head to your Lowe's, your Ace Hardware, your local hardware store, or get it off of eBay. You want a tap set. What is a tap set going to be? It's going to be one tap and one drill bit. The drill bit will be a little bit narrower than the tap. What you do is you drill your hole, then you thread your tap through, and it makes threads. So this black portion, not the portion we're bolting on, but the black portion will now be threaded, and that's going to pull this piece tight. They come in different sizes. I've chosen 1032. 10 is actually a pretty big screw. You can do 832. You can do 1024. What the last number is the amount of threads per inch. So 32 has more. It's a more fine thread than a 24. Then you need to get two. I always get a couple spares just in case, of the same thread in a countersink bolt. What's countersink? It's flat on the top and beveled on the bottom. So we're going to put a countersink in here. These are not only going to center that piece, but they're going to pull it tight against the Floyd. I have now located my piece exactly where I want it. I put a clamp on there to keep it sturdy while I drill the holes. I'm going to sit this in a vise. I'm going to drill two holes. Can't be too far to the edge because we need the meat to pull this into the other piece. So bring them in maybe 1/4 of an inch and drill two holes on the outside. I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, I am back. Here's what we did. We put our little piece up against there. We drilled two of the holes with the drill bit from the kit we bought, which is exactly the size you need to thread. Then I take this part away from it, drill just this part with a bigger drill bit. How big? Just big enough that our bolts will slide through and not hit the threads. So these things need to slide in and be a little bit below flush, meaning they've got to be a little bit below the surface. How do you do that? I actually take a countersink and drill on it until it gives me enough room that they sit below the surface. We can't have these above the surface. Why? This is the part that sits up against the wood. If these are hanging out there like that, then they're going to hit the wood, not the big flat part. This, over time, will wear through the wood, and where our Floyd is today might not be there in 2 or 5 or 10 years. If we keep the flat part against the flat part, and the bolts or the screws don't come in contact because they're below the surface, this will always be flat against flat, and it'll never move. So I took my countersink, I made those. I took my bigger drill bit, made sure that these screws fit in there and a little bit below the surface. So this part is done and ready to go. Set that over there for now. Take this part, do not drill it bigger because it's already got the perfect size. We take our tap and we screw it through here. Be careful, these are made of junk pot metal. They will gall up, so don't crank it if it starts getting hard. Back it out, blow on it, try to clean it out, put a little drop of oil in there, and then go again. When it starts to get hard, back it out. You do not want to break one of these off in there. I've done it 100 times. Okay, let's say 50. I've probably broken one off 50 times. That's one of the reasons why I went to the 10-24 and 10-32 rather than the 8s. It's a little bit bigger. These don't break as much, and my screws don't break as much. So let's say we've got these both tapped, and now they are threaded to accept the screws. Take our piece, make sure it lines up. Then, just like we did with bolting the neck on, there's a little bit of metal now that's sticking out this way. We want to take a bigger drill bit or take a countersink, and it's probably going to take a little bit more than just hand strength now, but we want to get these so there's nothing hanging out. We made that thing exactly the thickness we want. We don't want anything in here keeping it either off kilter one direction, have a spacer under this side but not this side. We want them to be even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bigger drill bit and just give it a little bit of love. So I take my bigger drill bit, just take a little bit of material off. A little bit still hanging on that second one. Get all the junk pieces out because we don't want those anywhere near us. We know which side we want to the top. Okay, that looks good. Then do the same on this back side, because same thing. Anything here, I've already done it on this, but do the same type of thing. In fact, I'm going to do just a little more on that one because it's just a touch hanging up there. Nice and smooth. I know the side that I want down. The holes are drilled accordingly. Put these guys in here and start screwing them down. That's going to hold that piece up tight against the block. Check your paint and make sure. You might be able to shift it just a little bit. Make sure it's nice and square. Make sure it's exactly where you want it before you really torque it down. A lot of times I'll buy screws that are too long. And you say, Buzz, that's stupid. Why would you buy them too long? Well, here's why. If they come out the back and you cut them off or grind them flat, now there's no way for them to get out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some red Loctite in here, and that's going to keep them from screwing out over time. We're done. That thing is set. Now the Floyd is ready to go back together, strings back on. You're going to see. You're going to be able to dive bomb, but it will stop immediately. Also, when you put this on, before you put good strings on, check and make sure it's sitting flat. Make sure there's no weird machining differences in the body where it might be at a little bit of an angle where we need to adjust this. We should have seen that when we did all of our measurements. I obviously didn't see it on this guitar, so we're good. But that's where we're at. Now we're ready to go. We're ready to put this thing together and have some fun and start playing our super cool guitar. We're going to do a couple more things before we wind up, but that's about it. Once we have that piece on the front of there and we don't drop it like an idiot, we're done. That's what we wanted to do. Now reassemble it and we're ready to go. Let me show you how to save some time, some heartache, and some headache. Take this baby just like it is, even though I dropped it on the ground like an idiot. Take your guitar, put it into where it's going to be, get the strings out of the way. Put that thing into where it's going to be. Make sure A, it sits flat just like you like it. And 2, do a couple of dive bombs. Make sure it goes and doesn't hit anything. I actually just put this one in, and there was just a little edge right here on the corner that hit that lip we were talking about, because the lip actually turns in earlier than the flat spot did. So we measured it with our marks, full width, and over here it actually came in. So I had to take a little bit off the top right there to make sure that it would dive bomb all the way through its range of motion. Now it's happy. I like where it sits, where it's flat, and we're good to go. You can also press it up against where it's going to be. Check the back, make sure we're sitting nice and flat where we want to be, which again, I like it. And we're ready to put it back together. So let's finish up by answering the question. Why are we doing this? Why is all of this necessary? First, tuning. These things are impossible to tune. They are always floating. If you break a string, all the rest of your strings are out of tune. It's easier to change strings and do that type of thing and tune with this. You don't have to put your E higher than the rest as you're going through raising them all, because as you raise this high E, this E is going to drop lower. They can be a pain in the butt. They're hard to get to understand tuning wise. Number 2, tuning. What does that mean? We just talked about tuning? No. Let's say we want to tune down a half step. If you do that with a normal Floyd, you got to get in the back and adjust your springs as you're adjusting your strings to make sure everything's flat where you want it. You can't tune to D. You can't put a D tune on a full floating system. If you do, you put that thing to D, all the rest of your strings are now out of tune, so they're not in tune with the rest of the band. You can get them in tune with the rest of the guitar, but you take the thing to E and then to D, all the rest of the strings are shifting. So if you see somebody that's properly got a D tuner, whether it's the D tune brand or not, it has to be blocked out for it to work properly. So we got to have that if we're going to tune to D. To tune a half step down. That way you don't have to have guitars sitting around when you go out to a little club on Saturday night. You don't need 19 guitars. This one's a half step down because we're going to play some Van Halen. This one's in standard. This one's in drop D. No, one guitar can tune all night, and you don't have to be in the back playing with your springs and all that kind of stuff. You can be in tune with the rest of the band. That's pretty much why we do it functionally. Why do we do it sonically? We talked about it a little bit. This now, we're going to put the strings on it. We already had it set up. We're going to put about 2 full turns to each of the screws in the back. That's going to increase the spring tension, which is going to put that flat spot up against the wood. And now, rather than sit just off of these 2 posts for all of our sustain and our resonance, now it's going to sit up against the body, and it's going to help it sustain. You're going to notice the note's going to hit a little quicker. Once you get this done, you're going to realize, I love my Floyd Rose again. I love being able to lock in. I love being able to have my minor tuning adjustments here rather than trying to get them right, going back and forth, back and forth. You're going to find out that you're going to love hitting a whammy bar again, because every time it's going to come back to exactly where it was before. None of that guessing where you get a cheap Floyd and you're playing, you dive bomb way low and your guitar seems like it's low, and then you pull it up and then it's too high because it doesn't come back to 0. Now it comes back to 0 every time, so you're going to fall in love with using your whammy bar again. That's why we do this. I hope it helped. I hope it worked out for you. We've got a few more things to do to this guitar to make it something really cool, but we're certainly on our way. $80? This thing's way cooler than $80 right now. So we're going to do a little bit of wiring. We're going to show you a little bit of the taping things off, and then we're going to do a truss rod adjustment, intonation. We're ready to rock. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope this helped. If you don't understand or it's not making sense, give me a comment down low or send me an email, whatever. I'd love to help you out, because once you get this right, you will love your Floyd Rose again. Thanks for watching. Keep on rocking.